Assalamualaikum doktor, selamat hari raya.
Selamat Hari Raya Kadir. Sehat semua?
Tak berapa nak sihat doktor pakai gelang merah ni. Gelang pink ni.
So tak apalah, hati-hatilah semua ya, hati-hati. Okay, so bismillah. Masih kuarantin lagi?
Kena kuarantin doktor. So kita buatlah assignment.
Tak apalah, rezeki dekat rumah. Okay, so bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh and very good afternoon to everyone. Okay, so have we completed this topic on quantitative research method? Not yet, right? Not yet, right? This one, right? Tak ingat lah. Okay, by the way, the two names, Al-Arifi and Zakwan. I'm not sure what happened to your folder, but again, regarding the name of your folder, make sure you use your metric number as the name of your folder. And again, after you completed your assignment, no need for you to reshare again the folder. You just locate your assignment within the folder that you have shared earlier. Okay, no need for you to reshare the folder. You just use that similar folder. You just locate inside your folder and I will review later on. Okay, so no need for you to reshare. Okay, so ada Arifi. Okay, so we proceed lah. I'm not sure I've done or not on this one, but I think not yet. Okay, so we now we focus on quantitative research method.
Not yet, doctor.
Yeah, right. Okay, so okay, because last time we done on hypothesis and literature review, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this week we are going to further discuss regarding the quantitative research design. Actually, I've received a few message lah regarding some of you quite confused related to the design that you within your articles. Okay, so perhaps after we completed this session, so at least you have some ideas on what is research design. Okay. By the way, research method, okay, to differentiate line between research method and research design. Okay, research method and research design. Okay, so research method cover all the methods, all the techniques that you use to conduct your research. Okay, meanwhile research design, it is a subcomponent under your research method. Okay, research in which before you conduct your study, you should know what is exactly your research design. Okay, so earlier, okay, sorry again. So this week I will introduce you to one of the paradigm. Okay, one of the bigger paradigm. So in actual, when we talk about research methods, okay, so we have three main research, big research paradigm. Okay, we have three. Okay, so by the way, quantitative research referring to research that relies on primarily on the production of quantitative data. Okay, so again, we have three research continuum. Big or the other name is paradigm or approach. We have the first one, we have the qualitative research. Okay, qualitative, this one. The second one is quantitative. Okay, and then the third one is mixed research. Okay, tiga. We have three types of research approach. Okay, quantitative, qualitative, and mixed research. Okay, so quantitative research, it relies primarily on the collection of quantitative data. So basically we use the quantitative research when your interest is you want to collect the data in terms of numbers. If you are interested to know about interested about collecting the data related to numbers, then you proceed with quantitative research. Okay, but the qualitative research, it relies primarily on the collection of qualitative data. Okay, so qualitative data ni probably in terms of words. Okay, when you collect the data, your finding is in wording form. For example, as the result of interview. When you conduct the interview among your respondents, then Then as a result of your interview session, you need to transform the recording the recorded version for your interview into the verbal form. Okay, the name is transcript. Okay, you conduct the interview. Okay, and then during the interview, you record the interview with the consent from your respondent. Okay, and then after that, you need to transcribe the interview, the voice recording into the writing form, which is the process we call as transcribing. Transcribe. You transform your data, your voice recording to the written form. Okay. Ini maksud kualitatif. Quantitative ni again you will collect the data in which the data in number form, in numbers. Okay, so next one is mixed method or mixed research method. Okay, so this one it involves the research that mixing of quantitative and qualitative methods or other paradigms in characteristics. Sorry. Okay, so kalau untuk yang mixed method ni, it is actually just combine the quantitative and qualitative research in one study. Okay, for quantitative and qualitative, we do it separately, but for mixed, we just combine the two research design. For example, we use a mixed research ni, most of the time we use mixed research. For example, if you want to develop a new instrument, a new questionnaire, for example. Okay, you want to develop a new questionnaire. So most of the researchers might consider to use the mixed method. Mixed ni probably, perhaps first they start with interview first. Interview with their respondent first. Okay, then after they collected the interview and then come up with teams. Okay, teams ni considered to be the finding lah under qualitative. Okay, then after they analyze these teams. Okay, and then they come up with questionnaire. Okay, so based on this questionnaire, okay, and then they refine the items and then they distribute to the respondent. So this one is quantitative lah. Okay, this one, the first one in qualitative, the second one is quantitative. Okay, so this one, the name is mixed method. Okay, any questions so far? Clear? Any question? The differences between the three, quantitative, qualitative, and mixed?
No, doctor.
Okay, very good.
Clear.
Okay, so next one is the basic differences between quantitative and qualitative research. Okay, so for qualitative, as we can see, we interested to use qualitative research when we are interested in exploring something. Okay, we want to explore, we want to understand more regarding a certain phenomena. Okay, so then we're making observation to develop theory. It is also possible when we use the qualitatively, we want to develop a new theory. Okay, we want to develop a new theory. The name is grounded theory probably. Okay. Okay, and then meanwhile for quantitatively, we use the quantitative because we want to confirm the others study. Qualitatively, we conduct because perhaps there is still little understanding regarding a certain phenomena that you want to explore. There are still limited studies. Okay, there are still lacking in terms of the theories that can explain about the situation. So that's why we conduct the qualitative study, because we do not have enough understanding on the situation. Okay, meanwhile for quantitative, we use it because we already have a very, at least theory that is able to explain the situation. Okay, and then there are also past studies that have been conducted in the similar area with the one that we interested to do. Kalau quanti ni maksudnya dia dah ada teori, okay, then dia dah ada past study that have been conducted in similar areas. Okay, and then now our responsibility as a researcher, we want to confirm that findings again. Ini maksud confirmatory ni we want to confirm. Okay, the findings from past studies. Okay, and then in terms of the philosophical assumptions, okay, so for the qualitative ni, the main basic foundation is it is based on subjectivity. Subject ni means that apa maksud subject? Okay, one situation can give multiple meanings. Tak, itu salah satu maksud subjectivity. For example, when I ask you about the definition of delicious food, okay, the definition of delicious food to you. Okay, Arifi, what do you mean by delicious food?
Delicious food means that you are very satisfied with the food, with the flavor, and also the appearance of the food.
Okay, dia ada flavor. Okay, satisfied with flavor lagi.
Appearance, and also the taste.
Appearance. Okay, and then next one, taste. Okay, taste. Lagi nak tambah?
Ingredient use.
Ingredient use. Okay. Lagi, ada lagi?
Finally, maybe how healthy food.
Healthy food.
Yes.
Okay. Then? Done Lagi?
Done.
Okay. What about you, Melinda? What do you mean by delicious food?
I would say the same thing. According to my taste buds, tasty, appealing.
Okay, appealing. Then?
I think most of it has already been mentioned.
What else? Sharul? Is there anything that you want to add?
Something that I like to eat.
Something that you like to eat. Is it similar to appealing? No. No.
No.
This one is based on your preference lah, Preference.
Yes, betul.
Lagi? Anything that you want to add?
No.
Ada tak? The food that been cooked by mother? Ada?
Maybe.
Yes. Always delicious.
Okay. So means that if you can see, three of you give different ideas regarding what does it mean by delicious food. So kat sini, the means of subjectivity ni is referring to the one phenomena, but it give multiple meaning, multiple realities. The term that we use is multiple realities. There is only one term, delicious food, but this term it can give different meaning to different people. So this is what we want when we conduct the qualitative. We want to know what is actually the essence of a certain phenomena from individual perspective or group or organization. Okay, so this is what our interest is. Okay, but for quantitative, clear for subjectivity ni? Clear? Clear tak?
Kiranya tak ada yang
there is no right or wrong. It is depend.
There's no right or wrong.
There is depend on the opinion given by our respondents. Clear? Yeah.
Clear, Doctor.
Okay. But
Subjective
yes,
is our opinion, right?
yes, it is based on the respondent's opinion. But make sure lah, before you ask the question, the researcher should know that this is the limit for your question. For example, I said delicious food. The term is I want to know the delicious. What does it mean by delicious food by my respondents, for example. So we set only to this one. Okay, but the definition may varies from one respondent to another. Clear?
Okay, Doctor.
Okay. Next one is for the quantitative. For the quantitative, we use objectivity. So objectivity referring to Okay, when we want the respondent, the answer from the respondents, we already set the options that they need to choose. Okay, so this one you try to reflect when you answering the questionnaire. Okay, you are not given many options to give the view on the questions stated in the questionnaire. But instead, you have just to choose whatever answer stated within the questionnaire. Am I correct?
Yes, doctor, because I think this will be more of a yes or no, or maybe a limit number of answers that you have to just pick from that
You were
given answers.
You were given the options, but it is not it is not you cannot reveal your own views. Okay, you were given
just like sitting on an exam.
Yes, you were
just
given
like sitting
option.
for an exam.
Yes, correct. Okay, you need to select the answer from the given answers. Okay, you cannot give answers outside from those in the questionnaire sheet. Okay, so this one is based on predetermined answers. Okay, so in which that's why it is considered to be objective. Okay, clear? Okay, next one is contextualization for qualitative. Context meaning that, okay, when we want to conduct the study, we just want to understand the specific context. Context. For example, just now I said that I want to know about delicious food. Okay. Among middle-aged citizen. Okay. So I want to know what does it mean by delicious food, by middle-aged citizens in Malaysia. For example, so this is the context of my study. Okay, so I want to understand if the mid citizens in Malaysia, what does they mean about delicious food that can cause them diabetes, for example. Okay, this is for example. So this is the context here. Okay, so I just want to understand again. But for quantitative, the concern is we want to make generalization. The main interest is it is based on generalizability. Generalizability it is based on the concept of, okay, we draw a conclusion from sample, okay, and then we make generalization to the bigger population. Faham? Okay, because in quantitative, basically we conduct our study among samples of our respondent, and then from the finding of the samples, we want to make generalization, or we want to make inference. We want to infer our findings from the population, from the sample to the population. But for qualitative, there is no such interest. The main interest is we just want to understand the context of our study. There is no intention to make generalization to anybody. It's just for the group saja. The groups that involved in the study directly only that we are interested to know. Okay, clear? For the second point, contextualization and generalizability. Ya. Ke dah beratur dekat Pasaraya. Okay, clear? Okay, next one, inductive reasoning. Okay, so inductive reasoning, I always love to use this symbol, the tunnel. Tunnel ni. Saya guna ni. Okay, inductive means that, okay, you collect the data because when you do the literature review, it is very limited. Okay, because as you know, based on the principle of subjectivity just now, it is based on multiple realities. Okay, so there is actually nothing much that we can predict about human intention. until we until we directly collect the information from them. Okay, so that's why it is very small here. Dekat top ni, tunnel ni dia memang kecil kat atas ni. Sebab limited, kita tak boleh explain banyak tentang sesuatu fenomena selagi kita tak directly have interaction with our respondent. For example, if you want to study about origin people, masyarakat orang asli terutamanya. Okay, so kalau kita nak tahu pasal dia, kita tak boleh tahu banyak selagi kita tak sendiri pergi jumpa dia, kita tengok cara hidup dia. Okay, so that's why dia kecil kat sini. But the result of the finding, the result of the study ni probably can be applied to many situations. Okay, there is a limited in terms of the way we information here. But after we conduct the study, we got the result, the application might be very wide. Okay, if you may recall, this one the words develop theory. Okay, one of the main intention lah for qualitative ni, we want to develop a new theory. Okay, faham Ini untuk quali. But for quanti, it is based on deductive. Deductive, we just draw tunnel ni terbalik ke atas ni. Okay, so means that before you conduct the quantitative research, there are actually at least some of the past studies that also explore the same thing as what you want to do. Okay, so you have quite a number of literature or information regarding a certain phenomena that you want to study. Okay, then after you conduct the study, your findings, okay, only applies to the population, the studied population. Okay, the sample, okay, from the sample, then you just apply to the population, to its population only. Okay, it cannot go beyond that. For example, you study the factors influencing proactive work behavior among primary school teachers. Okay, so after you conduct your study, and then the finding of your study only applicable to primary school teachers only. It might not be able to be generalized to secondary school teacher or the university lecturers. Cannot. Boleh? Faham? Faham setakat ni the differences between inductive and deductive? Faham? Diam dah pula. Okay, diam tanda setuju. Okay, so next one. Okay, the depthness.
Faham doktor, faham.
Faham, alhamdulillah. Okay, the depthness. Okay, regarding the depthness, you just imagine tasik yang dalam. Okay, tasik yang sangat dalam. Okay, dia kecil tapi dia dalam. Okay, for quantitative, the area that we cover is very small, just small piece. But we go in depth, we explore in depth. Okay, that's why the question that we ask mostly related to how, why? Because we want to know further, we want to get their explanation further regarding the situation. Okay, faham the depthness. But for the quantitative, it's a breadthness. Breadthness means that satu tasik yang luas. Ni tasik yang dalam. Okay, di dalam. This one adalah tasik yang luas. But it is not depth. Okay, ni dia tak luas tapi dia dalam. Yang ni dia luas tapi dia tak dalam. Okay, we just know the surface. Faham?
Faham doktor.
Okay, next one related to words.
Faham
Again,
doktor.
Faham, bagus. Okay, so next one related to the finding. When we conduct the qualitative research, the finding that we get is in words, in wording form. Meanwhile, for quantitative, the finding or the result, the data that we have is in numbers, number. For quantitative, as much as possible, we want to make it as quantifiable form. Quantifiable means something that kita boleh quantify. Okay, in qualitative, as much as possible, we try to avoid the quantification because it is based on the principle of multiple realities. Tak semua benda kita boleh convertkan dalam nombor. Tapi kalau orang kuanti ni semua benda dia nak convertkan nombor. Itu contoh saya lah saya tu memang saya suka semua benda saya nak convertkan dengan nombor. Okay. Okay, so example of a specific research design or approach in qualitative research. Okay, these are among the most well known lah Dia ada banyak, but these are among the well known. The first one is narrative qualitative research. The second one, phenomenology. The third one, grounded theory. Okay, the fourth one is ethnography. Next one is case study. Okay, so dia ada 5. Kalau ini adalah biasanya daripada buku Creswell. Creswell ni biasa disebutkan ada 5. Sebenarnya banyak lagi. Antaranya adalah basic qualitative. Okay, itu antaranya. Tapi ini adalah examples of qualitative research design. Dia ada kualitatif yang besar, tapi bawah kualitatif ni dia ada cabang dia lagi. In which the example ni adalah 5 ni. Okay, but for quantitative, okay, the biggest paradigm is quantitative, but in specific there are more. Okay, so for example, the first one we have the descriptive study. Okay, descriptive study ni, for example, you want to collect a very discrete study, for example, related to who will win the next election, for example, based on the citizens' preference. Kita nak tahu tu je. There is only one variable included in your study. Okay, itu descriptive. Okay, next one, correlational. We have correlational study in which the main purpose of you conduct the study is you want to know the associations between variables. You want to know the associations between variables. Next one, quasi-experimental, and then next one is experimental study. So this one we will look one by one. Because today I'm going to focus on quantitative research design only. Next one nanti kita tengok bila kita boleh cover on qualitative. Okay, so any questions so far? Clear regarding the philosophical assumptions? Is it clear?
Okay, clear.
Tak clear lagi lepas ni, siap.
Clear, doctor, clear.
This is the example the qualitative and quantitative. So for example, you have a ride with your wife or husband, okay, and then perhaps the conversation the conversation between the husband and wife who would thought that a structure of steel could be so beautiful, strong and delicate at the same time. You can see how the wife elaborate, okay, how does the the structure of the bridge looks like. Bridge betul lah. Faham tak? Dia describe. Okay, but for the husband, it shortens my commute to work by 12.7 miles. Tu nampak kalau suami biasalah ni tapi this is the reality So most of the time we even come up with something that is quite unpredictable to be understood. So it is in qualitative form. But for men, okay, they really love to come up with something that is so simple and measurable. That's it. It shorten their their commute to work by 12.7 miles, regardless of how does the bridge looks like. Okay, boleh tengok, boleh faham the beza dia quali and quanti? Boleh Diam tanda setuju. Okay, next one. Okay, so baru masuk LO. Okay, so the learning outcome for today's session is at the end of the session, students are able to determine quantitative research assumptions and characteristics. Okay, you are able to differentiate between different types of quantitative research design. Okay. Okay, so these are among the assumption of quantitative research design. First, the first one is reality is objective, out there and independent of the researcher. Okay, so this in quantitative, when you conduct the study, you need to make sure that you got the objective answer from your respondent. So that's why when you look at the scale of the instrument or the questionnaire, by the way, the term that I use to referring to the questionnaire is either instrument or questionnaire. Okay, I use it interchangeably. I do not prefer to use survey. Okay, saya tak nak guna survey, but I use questionnaire and instrument. Okay, because survey ni saya takut you all confused dengan satu term nanti. Term dia adalah survey research design. So saya tak nak you all confused dengan tu. So saya guna perkataan questionnaire or instrument. Okay, and then the assumption is it must be the situation or the phenomenon is independent with the researcher. Independent means that the researcher cannot exact the influence from him or her to the respondent. Dia tak boleh during the data collection tu they insert their own bias within the answer that probably been given by the respondent. Faham? Itu maksud dia, independent. And then reality is something that can be studied objectively, sama macam yang atas ni. Okay, and then researchers should remain distant and independent of what is being researched. Okay, meaning that during your data collection process, you cannot influence or interfere with the answer that might be given by your respondent. Probably during your data collection process, if let's say you involve aunties that unable, auntie or makcik-makcik that unable to read, okay, so you have to be there to read the questionnaire for them. But when they want to give the answer, you cannot influence them. Faham? Faham Okay, research is value free in which the values of the researcher do not interfere with or become part of the research. Okay, for example, when you read the questionnaire to your respondent, okay, you cannot give your opinion. You cannot insert your values to influence your respondent to answer the questionnaire. Okay. Research is based primarily on deductive forms of logic and theory. So means that you reflect again with the word confirmatory with the previous slides. Okay, so means that when we conduct the quantitative study, you need to make sure that you have strong support from theories and then it must be logically derived from past studies. So dia adalah dua kriteria yang sangat penting dalam kuantitatif. Bila kita tak boleh buat kuantitatif, bila kita sebenarnya mahu explore. Bila kita nak buat kuanti ni sebenarnya kita dah ada the predetermined findings about our research. Okay? Kita buat study ni sebab kita nak reconfirm sahaja. Faham And then hypotheses are tested in cause and effect manner. Okay, so means in quantitative studies, they will involve the hypothesis testing. What is hypothesis?
Relationship.
Just recall the previous lecture. What is hypothesis?
Early assumptions.
Variable, relationship variable, independent and dependent.
Najwa tadi, Najwa.
Early assumptions.
Early assumptions. Okay. Ingat recall what is hypothesis. Hypothesis is an early assumptions that we make related to the findings of our study. Itu maksudnya hypothesis. Okay, so the goal for quantitative is to develop generalizations that contribute to theory. Generalization ni again, okay, it is related to when we conduct our study, we use sample. Okay, from the sample, we want to infer our findings to the population. Ni proses dia, generalization or inference. Apa lain? Dah ni faham Okay. It is enables the researcher to predict, explain and understand some phenomenon. Okay, but in explain and understand in very limited way lah but the most is predict. Okay, we are able to predict the future occurrence based on quantitative research. This one probably when it relates to the equation of y equals to mx plus c. Ingat lagi equation ni, equation ni. Ni. During our secondary school.
Kecerunan.
Ya. Kecerunan ni. Okay, so this one we use as a prediction equation. Okay, those who works in business line. Apa yang bekerja dalam business. Okay, perhaps you want to predict what is your revenue for next year based on the occurrence for this year. Based on this year, revenue of this year, you want to predict your revenue for next year. So then we can use this equation. Okay, so inilah equation prediction ya. Any questions so far? Ada. Okay, next one. The purpose. Okay, so these are the main purpose of quantitative research. The first one, again, we want to make generalization. Okay, based on time and context-free generalizations through nomothetic or generalized statements. Okay, and then next one, we want to make prediction. Okay, and then it is because we are interested to know about causal explanation. Causal ni, cause and effect. What are the variables influence another variables? Cause and effect. What influence what? Okay, ini dia three reason kenapa we are interested to do to conduct a quantitative research. Okay, the approach, the first one, we begins with hypothesis and theories. Okay, and then it involves the manipulation and control. Okay, and then we use formal and structured instruments, experimentation and intervention. It is based on deductive, component analysis, seeks consensus or the norms and reduce data for to numerical index. Okay, and then abstract language in written out. Okay, ni tak apa. Okay, so this one is the role of researcher when you conduct the quantitative research, in which the first one you must be detached. Okay, you must detach yourself from your respondent, and it is also must be based on impartiality. Okay, bila relatekan balik dengan yang slide awal tadi yang saya kata that you cannot influence, that you cannot transfer your values to your respondent. Okay, you have to detach. Refrain yourself from influencing your respondent. Objective portrayal means that during the data collection, it must be based on something that is or are objective. Okay, and ethics in which outsiders' point of view. Okay, it is not supposed to be based on another's point of view. It is solely based on respondents' point of view. Okay. Okay, so these are amongst the specific types of research quantitative research design. Okay, kalau saya bahagikan kepada umum umum, for quantitative ni kita ada dua. Okay, we have two we have two main division. The first one is experimental research and second one is non-experimental. Experimental, non-experimental. So experimental ni we have three. Okay, the first one is pre-experimental. I will explain later. Second one, quasi-experimental. Next one is true experimental. So we have three. Okay. Meanwhile, for non-experimental, we have some of the example include descriptive survey research, meta-analysis, ex post facto or causal comparative research, or correlational research. Okay, so these are example of non-experimental quantitative research. Okay, next one, then if we divide by time frame, Okay, if we divide by time frame, okay, if let's say you conduct your data collection at just one time only, okay, the name is cross-sectional. Okay, if the data collection of your study only happen once at the same time, the name is cross-sectional. But if your data collection happen few times in different time, few times in one period, few times in some period of time, okay, it is considered to be longitudinal. Cross-sectional ni, for example, you conduct one study in 2016. Okay, so that's all. You collect your data at that time only. Okay, that one is considered to be cross-sectional. Longitudinal ni, it's happened when the researcher interested to know the long effect of certain phenomena. Okay, so perhaps they collect the data for the first data collection happened in 2016, the second data collection happened in 2018, the next one 2020, and next one probably will be in 2022. So this is longitudinal. Okay, the data collection happen few times in in certain period of time. Clear? Between cross-sectional and longitudinal. Long panjang, cross ni satu je. Cross. We cross the time. Satu je. Faham?
Doctor, it should be years.
It can be years, it can be months.
Because I ada baca masa I buat artikel tu, ada kata kalau 6 months pun dia boleh guna long.
Yes, it can be years as long as the data collection do not happen at similar time. Okay, similar time. It can be months, years, hours tu no lah hours no. Okay, clear between cross-sectional and longitudinal. Okay, so these are the example of a longitudinal study. We have trend study, we have cohort study, and we have panel study. Okay, so this one rarely found lah the researcher that are interested to do longitudinal ni because it is very difficult. Mostly it is quite very difficult lah to me, very difficult to conduct the longitudinal study because when we conduct the longitudinal study ni, most of the time we just pick one group of respondents and then we observe them throughout the years, for example. So it is quite difficult for researcher to spend so much time on the respondent, and then the respondent also perhaps they do not comfortable for being followed or researched few times. Ini dia punya constraint. But the consequences of longitudinal ni very impactful. Sebabnya bila kita study dalam jangka masa panjang, kita boleh tahu kesan dia apa, cause and effect dia apa. Itu kelebihan longitudinal. Okay, so next one. Okay, this one based on time of experience lah tapi saya tak nak sentuh lah retrospektif dengan prospektif ni. Yang penting saya nak highlight ni je, dua ni. Ni saya nak highlight ni sikit lah, ni yang penting you all faham this one. Okay. Okay, the first one is experimental research. Okay, so in which it involves the study of the effect of the systematic manipulation of one variable on another variable. So when we talk about experimental research, please you remember that it must involve manipulation. Okay, it will automatically involve manipulation of certain variable. Okay, and then the manipulated variable is called the experimental treatment or the independent variable. Okay, and then the observed and measured variable is called the dependent variable. Okay, and then the final component of an experimental research is to control the extraneous variable. So in extraneous variable ni referring to any variable other than the independent variable that might influence the DV. Okay, and then in the manipulation process, so the experimenter or the researcher deliberately and systematically introduce change or the intervention and then observe the consequences of that change on the dependent variable. Okay, and then experimental research involve the testing of hypotheses about the effect of one variable on another. Okay, and then the goal of experimental research is to determine whether a causal relationship exists between two or more variables. Okay, so ini dia punya kekuatan experimental research lah, in which we can determine the cause and effect relationship after we conduct the experimental research. Okay, so this is the illustration for the experimental research, the basic element of any experimental research. Okay, again, it involves the variable that we manipulate. Okay, for example, the temperature okay, the influence of temperature on on the mouse immunization, for example. Kesan temperature, kesan suhu terhadap imunisasi tikus, for example. So then we manipulate the temperature. Okay, and then the effect is we measure what happened to the mouse, to the mice. Okay, kita tengok apa yang berlaku kepada tikus contohnya. So then we measure the dependent variable. Okay, and then we insert certain treatment lah this one ni. Okay, if there any treatment, then temperature, certain kita ubah temperature, dan perhaps satu ni temperature ni adalah 30 degree Celsius. This one for example 70. Ni contoh you jangan gelap pula, 70 ni mati dah tikus ni, kering. Okay, so we see the differences between treatment A and treatment B. And then meanwhile, okay, because in this study it just involve temperature, for example temperature and imunisasi, tahap imun. Okay, and then another factor that might that has the possibility to influence the mouse immunization ni, we control them. Okay, for example in terms of their food, for example kita control benda ni. Okay, ni maksudnya extraneous variable ni, maksudnya pemboleh ubah selain daripada IV ni kita akan control supaya kita tahu yang kesan imunisasi ni solely because of temperature. Itu maksudnya, sebab kita nak tahu kesan tu sebenarnya daripada temperature ke atau daripada apa. So that's why kita kena control the extraneous variables ni. Clear? Okay, next one. Classification of experimental research ni we can divide into two classification. The first one is based on a number of independent variable included in the study. Okay, if let's say in the study you just include one single variable, one single independent variable, so then the name is single variable design. Maksudnya dalam kajian you all kalau hanya ada satu je IV dia. Tadi for example-nya contoh tadi adalah temperature. Okay, so we have only one single variable. So the name of the design of this specific design is single variable design. Okay, dia tadi daripada atas kalau kita sebut balik, it is quantitative, experimental and single variable research design. That is how you address the the research design ni. You kena sebut asal dia siapa, experimental. From the experimental then it highlight on single variable design. Okay, itu dia punya keturunan dia. Okay. The next one is factorial design, in which for factorial design ni it referring to the study that use two or more independent variables, at least one of which is manipulated. Okay, you have in your study now, if you have more than one IVs, in which probably at least one of the IVs you manipulate. So this one is considered to be the factorial design. Quantitative, experimental and factorial design. Clear? Clear setakat ni? Okay, so next one is classification according to control over threats to internal validity. Okay. Internal validity ni referring to the we have control over the extraneous variables. Okay. So the first one we have pre-experimental, in which it is referring to no random assignment of subject to groups or other strategies to control extraneous variable. Pre-experimental ni referring to bila kita when we want to conduct the study, okay, we pick one group, okay, and then this group ni there is no random assignment. Okay, there is no strategy that we randomly pick the respondent. We just conveniently pick the respondents to be included in our study. So this one is referring to pre-experimental. The second one is true experimental. True experimental ni also called as randomized design, in which we use the randomization and provide maximum control of extraneous variable. So dalam true experimental ni, when we want to conduct our study, we randomly pick, okay, our respondent. Okay, we do not use the convenience sampling, but we use the random selection. Okay, next one is quasi-experimental. Okay, it is referring to a design that is lack of randomization but employ other strategies to provide some control over extraneous variable. Dia tak, quasi-experimental ni dia tak, dia perhaps dia lacking in terms of randomization. Maksudnya lacking kat sini probably ada, probably tak ada. But it also include another strategies to control the influence of extraneous variables ni. Okay. Next one, okay, pre-experimental design. Okay, pre-experimental design ni the main weaknesses if you due to the non-existence of random assignment tadi, okay, it provide little or no control of extraneous variable. Okay, and then it is also considered to be a very weak design, a very weak quantitative research design lah. So maksudnya kalau weak ni kita tak cadangkan you all guna sangat. Okay. Okay, example of pre-experimental design. The first one, we have one group pre-test, post-test design. Okay, in which if you are interested to use this design, it in general it include 3 steps. Okay, the first one is you administer a pre-test measuring the dependent variable, and then you apply experimental treatment. Okay, and then after that you administer a post-test, and then again you measure the dependent variable. So then if you want to know the result, then you just compare the result for pre-test and post-test. Okay, then you compare. Okay, itu untuk one group pre-test, post-test. The second one is static group comparison. Okay, in which you use 2 or more pre-existing or intact static groups, only one of which is exposed to the experimental treatment. So untuk static group ni, we have 2 groups. Salah satunya tu kita bagi treatment. Treatment ni probably training, medicine and so on. Okay. And then although this design use 2 groups for comparison, it is flawed because the subjects are not randomly assigned to the groups and no pretest is used. Okay, so dia punya main weaknesses again untuk pre-experimental ni dia tak ada random assignment. Okay, kita tak randomly pilih responden kita. By the way, kenapa kita kena randomly pick our respondent Anybody can answer this question to me? Why we are so interested in randomization? Kalau dalam kuanti ni memang penting lah random ni.
Avoid bias.
Yes, to avoid bias. That's why we need to apply the random. We cannot simply choose our respondent based on our convenience or our preference. Cannot. Kalau dalam kuanti ni memang tak boleh. Seboleh-bolehnya tak boleh. Kita tak boleh pilih responden siapa yang duduk sebelah rumah kita. Okay, based on our cost savvy for example. Dan kita pilih responden kita adalah yang duduk dekat-dekat, yang duduk dekat Selangor sahaja sebab kita duduk kat Selangor. Tak boleh. Okay, dia reflect again kepada prinsip kita tak boleh, researcher tak boleh masukkan nilai dia dalam kajian tu. Okay. Okay, and then the researcher makes the assumption that the groups are equivalent in all relevant aspects before the study begins and that they differ only in their exposure to the treatment. Maksudnya sebelum kita buat kajian ni, kita just researcher ni assume kedua-dua group yang ada tadi dia ada keupayaan yang sama. Example keupayaan yang sama. Okay, and then in which dia orang dua group ni akan berbeza bergantung kepada treatment apa yang kita bagi. For example, kalau kita nak tahu tahap survivability among single parents, for example, satu kita pilih dua group. Okay, two groups of single parents. Okay, satu group ni kita tak bagi apa-apa latihan. We do not provide them with any treatment. But the second group probably we give training related to stress management, anger management. So then after that we compare the result. Kita tengok ada beza tak antara kedua-dua group ni. Faham? Faham
Faham.
Okay. Okay, next one. Okay, the next one is true experimental. Okay, so true experimental ni they are called as true experiments because subjects are randomly assigned to an experimental group and at least one control group. Experimental group, true experimental ni dikatakan dialah sebenarnya yang merupakan design yang betul-betul eksperimen. Sebab apa? Hanya dalam design ni sahaja yang mewajibkan ada random assignment. Random assignment tu bila ada komponen random assignment dan dia merupakan salah satu elemen yang wajib ada pada true experimental design. Okay, so because of the control they provide, they are the most highly recommended designs for experimentation in education. Okay, so untuk bidang HRD pun sebenarnya kita memang refer kepada education jugalah. Kita tak, HRD ni kita tak sangat on business, tapi untuk education pun kita tak sangat. Okay, sebab HRD ni dia bukan, we are not so much interested on company revenue. Okay, but because our main concern is we want to develop the human potential kan, manusia ataupun pekerja dalam organisasi. Kita tak berminat untuk tahu berapa seseorang employee tu dapat hasilkan revenue per year. Okay, tapi kita tahu kalau let's say we are able to develop or unleash the human asset within the organisation, then we know that the organisation ni can perform better. Okay. Example of the design for true experimental ni, the first one randomized subject, post-test only, control group design, a randomized match subject, post-test only, control group design, randomized subject, pre-test, post-test, control group design, Solomon 3 group design, Solomon 4 group design. Dia banyaklah ni, these are some of the examples. Okay. Okay, next one is factorial design. Okay, so based on earlier research, based on earlier design that I presented earlier, okay, that one I provide you with the most simple design that include only one variable in the study. Sama tadi lah expose factor tadi, expose factor pula. Dalam true experimental, pre-experimental, okay, and then true design, this one pre-experimental I just give the design here that only involve one independent variable. In true experimental also, this one also include one independent variable. But if let's say in your study you have more than one independent variable, okay, this one the name is factorial design. DV sama, satu je, but if you have more than one independent variable, okay, because in most of social phenomena, it is complex in which several variables often interact simultaneously. Okay, and restricting a study to one independent variable may impose an artificial simplicity on a complex situation. Sebenarnya kita tahu kalau dalam realiti kehidupan sebenar, sesuatu fenomena itu terjadi bukannya penyebabnya adalah hanya satu variable. Okay, penyebabnya akan ada banyak variable. Okay, so therefore kalau that's why adanya kajian yang mungkin melibatkan lebih daripada satu independent variable. Faham Okay, it involves manipulation of more variables simultaneously in order to study the independent effect of each variable on the dependent variable, as well as the effect caused by interactions among the several variable. Okay, maksudnya kalau kita ada factorial design ni, first probably we know, okay, this is example IV1, IV2. Okay, then this is our DV. Okay, first in factorial research design, we can determine the influence of first independent variables towards our DV. This is the first one. Okay, and then second one, we determine the influence of the second DV towards the we determine the influence of second IV towards our DV. Okay, and then third one, we can determine if, let's say, our IV and our first IV and the second IV interacting with one and another, so what are their influence on the DV? Faham? You want me to repeat? Tak payahlah
Yes,
repeat.
repeat.
Saya ingatkan repeat lah video saya nanti. Okay, so dalam factorial design, again saya repeat. Bila kita kata factorial design ni, dia akan ada dalam kajian you all sekurang-kurangnya 2 pun boleh ubah. 2 pun boleh ubah. Okay, di mana salah satunya adalah yang you all manipulate. Okay, IV1, IV2. Okay, so ini contoh dia We have IV, this is our DV. DV satu je, IV so biasa yang banyak. Okay, so this is first, second. So bila kita conduct factorial design, first kita akan tahu apakah kesan IV pertama kepada DV. Betul kan? Betul? So far boleh follow?
Betul.
The second one, kita akan tahu apakah kesan IV kedua terhadap DV. Boleh follow lagi? Okay, the third one, we can determine what is the influence of the interaction. Kalaulah IV1 dengan IV2 ni berinteraksi. Dua ni berinteraksi, so apa kesan dia terhadap DV? Contoh dia. Okay, years of experience, contohnya pengalaman bekerja. Bila you all bekerja dalam satu organisasi, you all ada pengalaman kerja. Lagi satu adalah latihan yang diberikan. So bila latihan dan pengalaman ni berinteraksi, ada sekali, so apa kesan dia kepada prestasi kerja? Itu maksud dia. Satu, meningkat. Kita tahu, contohlah satu kita tahu, contohnya IV you all adalah satu pengalaman kerja, lagi satu adalah kesan latihan. Pengalaman kerja, latihan terhadap prestasi. So first, dekat sini kita tahu apakah kesan pengalaman kerja terhadap prestasi. Yang kedua, kita akan tahu apakah kesan latihan terhadap prestasi. Dan yang ketiga, kita akan tahu apakah kesan sekiranya pengalaman kerja dan latihan ni ada, seorang pekerja tu dia ada dua-dua, so apa kesan dia terhadap prestasi kerja dia? Faham?
Faham.
So kita akan dapat more information when we include more variables in our study. Itu maksud dalam factorial design ni. Kalau let's say tadi saya kata kita just involve one variable ni, tadi kita just tahu pengalaman kerja tu sahaja. Apa kesan pengalaman kerja terhadap prestasi? Apa kesan latihan terhadap prestasi? Itu saja. Kita tak boleh tahu interaksi. Tapi bila kita ada factorial design, kita boleh tahu apa kesan interaksi. Selain daripada kita tahu kesan individual variable ni, kita boleh tahu kesan interaksi dia juga. Faham?
Faham.
Okay, very good. Okay, so next one, example of the factorial design is simple factorial design. So simple ni biasanya dua lah. Dia melibatkan dua. Okay, two factorial ANOVA. Okay, so 2 factorial ANOVA pula. 2 factorial design. 3 factorial design. Kalau simple ni dia merujuk kepada dua IB. Okay. Next one. Okay, next one is quasi-experimental research. Okay, so quasi ni it happen because sometimes it is not possible for us to randomly assign subject to treatment group. Maknanya dia lebih kurang dengan pre, tapi dia ada dua group. Kalau pre-experimental tadi kita tak ada buat randomization, tapi dia hanya involve satu group. Okay, but quasi ni dia ada more than one group. Okay, so quasi-experimental designs are similar to randomized experimental design in that they involve manipulation of an independent variable but differ in that subject are not randomly assigned to treatment group. So quasi-experimental ni dia sama macam true experimental tadi. Cuma dia tak ada randomization sahaja. Kalau dalam true tadi dia ada randomization. Okay, so because quasi-experimental designs do not provide full control, dia tak ada full control ni sebab dia tak boleh buat randomization lah itu maksud dia. So therefore, it is extremely important that researchers be aware of the threats to both internal and external validity and consider these factors in their interpretation. Maksudnya bila tak ada randomization tu dia mungkin ada banyak error yang akan berlaku bila kita conduct this type of research. But the role of researcher here, they need to address the possibility of what are the possible factors that can actually influence the DV. Okay. Example of quasi-experimental design, we have non-random control group, pre-test, post-test design, and then counterbalance design. Ini contoh dia. Okay. Ini time series ni tak apalah. Okay, so these are the comparison between pre-experimental, true experimental, and quasi-experimental. Okay. Okay, so any question related to experimental research design? Okay, tak ada. Okay, so next one is non-experimental research. Ini biasa yang kita pakai lah So this one probably you can, kalau you all involved in training within the organisation, so probably you are interested on the experimental research. Okay, so itu biasa yang kita pakai dalam organisasi lah. Kalau kita buat latihan, biasanya kita nak tahu apakah kesan latihan itu terhadap pembangunan employee. So then kita boleh buat pre and post test. Okay, faham Okay, so this one is non-experimental research. Okay, a researcher identifies variables and may look for relationships among them but does not manipulate the variable. So kalau dalam non-experimental ni kita still ada pemboleh ubah IV dengan DV, but the researcher also interested to look at the relationship, but the design do not include any manipulations of variable. Dia tak ada manipulation. Elemen manipulation tu tak wujud. Kalau dalam experimental tadi, elemen utama atau paling penting adalah dia mesti ada manipulation of the independent variable. Tapi kalau dalam non-experimental ni, they do not involve any manipulation of the variable. Okay. Example of research design under the non-experimental, the first one we have survey research. Okay, the survey research design, or also known as descriptive research. Okay. So, yang ni just nak cakap kat you all lah Bila kita sebut research design dalam quantitative research ni, kita kena directly tahu sebab dia ni quantitative research design ni, each design ni they link to the specific statistical analysis. Setiap research design ni dia ada specific data analisis yang boleh diguna pakai dekat design tu. Okay, tak semua design tu kita boleh apply semua statistik, tak boleh. So dia akan link dekat specific data analysis. Okay, so for example, the first one is when we talk about the survey research design, nama lain dia adalah descriptive research design because only descriptive statistics are applicable to be used when you conduct this descriptive research. Bila you all buat descriptive research, okay, hanya data analisis deskriptif sahaja yang you all boleh gunakan untuk tarik or extract information from the data. Itu maksud dia Okay, we use instruments such as questionnaire in an interview to gather information from groups of individuals. And then survey permits the researcher to summarize the characteristics of different groups or to measure their attitudes and opinions towards some issues. Okay, for example, macam saya bagi tadi lah, you conduct the poll. Kita buat satu survey, poll, okay, to know the citizens' preference on who's going to be the next Prime Minister, for example. So kita nak tahu berapa persen yang kata calon A yang akan jadi Prime Minister. Berapa persen yang akan kata calon B yang akan jadi Prime Minister. Kita nak tahu tu je. So then if let's say we are interested to know the information, so probably we can come up with the data that is related to percentage, okay, frequency, kan? Macam contohnya adalah preference kebarangkalian pengguna membeli barang setelah mendengar iklan daripada radio. Itu pun ada. Okay? Setelah kalau let's say pendengar dengar iklan daripada radio, berapa kebarangkalian yang diorang akan beli. So biasanya kalau kita interested dengan research macam ni, data dia adalah dalam bentuk frekuensi. Berapa orang? 80% ke 8% pendengar yang akan confirm akan beli, lagi 20% tak confirm ataupun langsung tak berminat. Okay, so that one basically this type of research ni mostly been used among the business lah to know their branding preference, contoh. Okay. Next one is exposed factor or causal comparative. Dia ni lebih kurang, kadang-kadang orang kata dia ni lebih kurang dengan quasi. Okay, dia macam-macam nampak lebih kurang. Okay, it is quite similar to an experiment except the researcher does not manipulate the independent variable which has already occurred in the natural course of event. So dia tadi cuma quasi tadi dia tak ada random, tapi dia still ada manipulation. Tapi this one dia probably random, tapi dia tak ada manipulation. Okay, clear? Dan elemen dia adalah dia berlaku dalam natural course of event. Dia berlaku dalam natural setting. Okay, contohnya kalau we are interested to know the influence of smokers, perokok, kesan rokok terhadap jantung. Smokers dengan jantung. So kita tak bolehlah nak manipulate our responder dengan kata okay, hari ni you all kena hisap sebanyak 8 puntung rokok contohnya, esok 5. Dia tak boleh macam tu. So perhaps in our study we just include memang the existing smokers. Orang yang memang dah smoke. So kita tak ada buat apa-apa adjustment, okay, terhadap responden kita. We do not manipulate, but we just follow their natural setting. Ikut dia lah dia nak merokok berapa batang sehari, but we just observe. As a researcher, we just observe, tengok berapa. So then kita tengok kesan dia terhadap jantung, kesihatan jantung, for example. Okay, clear Clear so far sebelum saya masuk yang lagi lain. Okay, so next one is correlational research. Okay, so correlational research ni we gathers data from individuals or 2 or more variables and then seeks to determine if the variables are related or correlated or not. Okay, and then correlations means the extent to which the 2 variables vary directly, either positive or inversely or negative relationship. Maksudnya bila kita conduct correlational research ni, dia boleh jadi dia melibatkan satu ataupun lebih independent variable without any manipulation. Okay, and then we are interested to know the direction of the relationship. We want to know the direction of the relationship, either there is a positive relationship or negative relationship or no relationship at all. So dia ada 3 jenis hubungan ni. Sama ada positif hubungan negatif ataupun tak ada hubungan langsung. Okay, so kalau macam ni, graf macam ni dia akan ni hubungan positif ke negatif? Kalau graf saya macam ni positif ke negatif ni?
Negatif
pula, ya Allah.
Positif.
Okay, maksudnya satu naik, yang kedua akan naik. Okay, positif IV, dV. Contoh positif. If our IV increase, our dV pun increase. Ni kat sini contohnya. Our IV increase, our dV also increase. Okay. And then second one, saya contoh je lah This one, kalau macam ni, negative relationship. In this case, increase in X, Y will decrease. Ni kalau kita tengok. Okay. Okay, so contoh contoh kalau IV increase, dV increase, the relationship considered to be
Positive.
Positive. IV decrease, dV decrease, positive.
Positive.
IV increase, dV decrease,
Negative.
negative. Okay, IV decrease, dV increase,
Negative.
so ni lah maksudnya dua ni merujuk kepada graf ni. Dua ni merujuk kepada graf ni. Faham? Macam mengajar anak sekolah je ni. Okay, okay, faham. Itu dia punya basic untuk correlational research. Correlational research ni dia ada lagi nama dia statistik correlational research. Tapi you all jangan confuse. Ini adalah design. Okay, so bila kita kata dalam bab 3 you all nanti bila you all nak mention design apa yang you all pakai, so you all sebut in this study we use quantitative, non-experimental and correlational research design. So nanti kalau saya tanya design apa yang you all pakai, so you all kena sebut ni. Dia punya nasab tu kena sebut. Nasab dia tu daripada mana? Correlational, non-experimental, quantitative. Macam tu cara sebut dia. So so those who ask me regarding the research method, so this is the answer. Sebab tu saya tak jawab. Okay, so these are the answer of the question of what is research design. Okay, next one. Okay, a survey that covers the entire population of interest is referred to census. Let's say you conduct one study, and then your study ni you include semua, you include all the members within your population. For example, you want to know, okay, the influence of turnover towards employee motivation. For example, you want to know the influence of turnover towards employee motivation in department A. Dekat department A je you all nak tahu. Department A. In this department there are around 100 employees. Okay, in this department there are only around 100 employees. And then in your study you include all. You include all the member without left any. So this one referring to nama dia adalah census. Census. Nama kajian ni memang spesifik. Nama dia census. Okay, example of census apa dia? Banci. Banci
negara.
Sebab itu sistem sekarang dia pakai tu My Census. Okay, sebab ni nama dia tu. Kajian sebab banci ni memang dia nak includekan ke semua rakyat Malaysia. Itu maksud banci tu. Okay, so banci tu adalah nama dia adalah census. Design tu sendiri adalah nama dia census. So bila kita sebut census ni, kita kena faham census ni merupakan satu kajian kuantitatif yang menggunakan kesemua sampel. Okay, faham Meanwhile, a survey that studies only a portion of the population is known as sample survey. Kajian kuantitatif yang menggunakan sampel dalam kajian tu nama dia adalah sample survey. Sample survey ni sebenarnya tadilah merujuk kepada design-design yang saya tunjuk tadi. Okay. Okay, so ni lagi lah sikit penerangan berkenaan dengan longitudinal ni. So this one tak payah tekankan dalam sangat pun tak apa. Just you have a basic idea what is referring to the longitudinal survey. Okay, so longitudinal study or survey gather information at different points of time in order to study the changes over extended period of time. Okay, and then 3 different designs are used in longitudinal survey research. The first one is panel studies, trend studies, and cohort research, cohort studies lah ya. So the first one is panel studies. It is the same subject are surveyed several times over an extended period of time. So panel ni dia hanya include satu group sahaja. Okay, dia hanya sama responden yang sama, dia observe banyak kali. Okay, for example, a researcher studying the development of quantitative reasoning in elementary school children would select the sample of first graders and administer a measure of quantitative reasoning. The same group would be followed through successive grade level and tested each year to assess how quantitative reasoning skills develop over time. Okay, so dia observe daripada start first grade lagi. Daripada tingkatan 1 sampailah tingkatan 5. So every year tu they do the observation. Okay. Because the same subject are studied over time, so researchers can see the changes in the individual's behavior and investigate the reasons for the changes. Nah, ini dia punya finding lah sebab bila kita study responden yang sama, so kita tengok apa sebab yang menyebabkan berlakunya perubahan tingkah laku. Okay. Next one is cohort study. Second one is trend study. So trend study differs from panel study in that different individuals are randomly drawn from the same general population and are surveyed at intervals over a period of time. Okay, so kalau dalam panel study tadi kita just pilih je satu group without any without any randomization. But this one for trend study ni we randomly pick and then we survey at different intervals over a period of time. Okay, so for example, researchers who have studied national trends in maths achievement, sample middle school student at various intervals and measure their maths performance. So maksudnya kalau dalam trend ni dia tak follow satu group yang sama. Dia just randomly pick tapi dalam beberapa jangka masa. Okay. Although the same individuals are not tested each time, if the sample from the population of middle school students are selected randomly, the results each time can be considered representative of the middle school population from which the student samples were drawn. Okay, and then test scores from year to year are compared to determine if any trends are evident. Okay. This is another example lah so nanti you baca lah dia punya contoh dia untuk trend study ni. Okay, so next one cohort studies in which it is a specific population is followed over a length of time with different random samples studied at various point. Okay, dia buat satu group tapi group ni bila dia nak buat data collection tu dia pilih randomly the group ni. Okay, so whereas trend studies sample a general population that changes in membership over time, a cohort study samples a specific population whose members do not change over the duration of the survey. Okay, so typically a cohort group has age in common. Okay, for example, a school system might follow the high school graduating classes of 2004 over time and ask them question about higher education, work experiences, attitudes, and so on. Okay, and then from list of all the graduates, a random sample is drawn at different point in time and data are collected from that sample. Okay, and then therefore the population remains the same during the study, but the individual survey are different each time. Okay, dia apa beza dia cohort study dengan dengan trend study ni. Faham Faham? Okay, diam tanda setuju. Okay, so next one cross-sectional study. So cross-sectional study ni again it is a cross-section sample of a population at a single point in time. Okay, so untuk cross-sectional ni data collection tu hanya berlaku sekali sahaja. Sekali je. Okay, and then in a longitudinal study of vocabulary development, for example, a researcher would compare a measure of first grade students' vocabulary skills in 2000 with one when they were fourth grade students in 2003. Okay, and seventh grade students in 2006. A cross-sectional study would compare the vocabulary skills of a sample of children from grades 1, 4 and 7 in 2006. So dia buat data collection sekali sahaja untuk setiap grade ni. 1, 4, 7. Sekali sahaja. Okay, the cross-sectional survey is the method of choice if you want to gather the data at one point in time. Okay. Ini yang paling senang. Dan biasanya untuk kita dalam HRD ni, inilah biasanya yang kita pakai. Okay, cross-sectional study. Cross-sectional study dengan correlational study tadi. Okay. Okay. So this one, the differences between longitudinal and cross-sectional. So longitudinal survey are more time consuming. Okay, and expensive to conduct because the researcher must keep up with their subjects and maintain their cooperation over a long period of time. Sebab nak buat longitudinal ni bukan senang. Okay, sebab kadang-kadang when we conduct a study that happen continuously, some of the researcher may decide to quit from the study. Contohnya mungkin dia dah tak sanggup nak diikuti ataupun dia dah meninggal ke, ada kes meninggal ke. Okay, so ini isu yang kadang-kadang kita tak boleh control bila kita conduct the longitudinal study. Okay, and then cross-sectional surveys in contrast do not require years to complete. Therefore, they are less expensive. So kalau biasanya untuk cross-sectional ni sebab kita buat data collection tu hanya sekali, so then dia ni less expensive lah compared to longitudinal. So a major disadvantage of the cross-sectional method is that chance differences between samples may seriously bias the result. Okay, so dia akan ada error kat sini kalau kita buat cross-sectional ni. Error dia adalah disebabkan chance. Maksudnya kesan yang result yang kita dapat tu sebenarnya bukan solely because of the influence of our DV. Dia probably because of others variable but we cannot trace. So maksudnya IB kita ni, kesan IB kita yang kita dapat ni sebenarnya dia hanyalah disebabkan chance. Okay. Okay, and then you may by chance draw a sample of first graders who are more matured than average and a sample of fourth graders who are less mature than average, with the result that the difference between the groups appears much smaller than it really is. Okay, maksudnya mungkin ada probability chance ni, maksudnya kalau kita buat data collection sekali contohnya, tiba-tiba kita buat randomization, tapi randomization ni kita ni terpilih, kita terambil responden dalam responden tahun 1 first grader, tapi responden tahun 1 yang kita pilih ni kebetulan dia ni merupakan pelajar yang lebih matang daripada average student, dia lebih matang. Okay, so bila kita buat analisis, kita tengok bila kita comparekan dengan third grader, fourth grader ni punya tahun 1 tu lebih matang daripada tahun 4. Sedangkan error tu berlaku sebenarnya bila kita tersalah pilih responden. Okay, itu chance lah maksud dia. Okay, and then however, researchers can usually obtain larger samples for cross-sectional studies than for longitudinal studies, and the larger samples mitigate the problem of chance differences. So macam mana kita nak elakkan berlakunya error of chance ni? Okay, the result ni happen due to chance, so we increase the number of sample in our study. Okay, so kita naikkan bilangan sampel tu untuk mengelakkan berlakunya bias dalam sampel yang kita pilih. Okay. Okay, next one is expose factor. Ini macam belum rasa macam dah. Taklah. Okay, so expose factor, okay, or causal comparative is similar to experiment except the researcher does not manipulate the independent variable which has already occurred in the natural course. Ini saya macam dah sebut lah tadi kan. Tak apalah, macam dah sebut ni. Okay, so this is comparing the different design between true experimental, quasi-experimental and expose factor. Okay, so these are the differences lah between the true experimental, quasi and expose factor. Nanti over tengok. Correlational research ni pun macam dah. Saya repeat benda sama. Okay, so again, this is I thought the last slide. Okay, so as what I said earlier, Okay, when we pick the quantitative research design, when we pick a specific quantitative research design, it is actually applies to a specific specific statistical analysis. For example, bila kita pakai experimental design ni, tak kira lah through experimental, quasi-experimental. Okay, so some of the applicable analysis that you might able to use is include t-test, one-way ANOVA and factorial ANOVA. Okay, and then factorial ni if you use the factorial design. Okay, if you use factorial design, then you can use the factorial ANOVA to check on the findings of your study. Okay, and then if you conduct the longitudinal studies, then probably you can also use the one-way ANOVA or factorial ANOVA. Cross-sectional, probably you can use t-test, one-way ANOVA, factorial ANOVA, correlations and regressions. Okay, and then for descriptive, if you use the descriptive research design, then probably in your findings you can report the descriptive statistic or descriptive analysis that might include MCT. MCT referring to measure of central tendency. MCT referring to measure of central tendency, which is referring to mean, mode, and median. Mean, mode, median, 3M. Okay, and then next one is MD. Okay, MD referring to measure of dispersion. Measure of dispersion referring to three types of statistic, which is range, standard deviation, and variance. Standard deviation, range, and variance. And the next one is measure of position. Measure of position is referring to quartile, interquartile, and so on. Okay. Okay, next one is if you use the exposed factor, so probably you can use t-test, one-way ANOVA, and lastly, if you use the correlational research design, so maybe in your analysis, you can apply the correlational analysis. For example, we have Pearson product moment correlation, Spearman rank order correlation, or you can also apply the regression, chi-square for, and then you also can use the chi-square to look for the relationship between the categorical variables if you have any categorical variable in your study. So that's all for today. I will post the video. Lepas ni saya cuba edit nanti saya post.